Hey, we're live. Hello. Welcome to another thrilling installment of the Isolated Literary Society has messy hair and presents Jane Austen's Persuasion. Sorry, a little bit. It's been a day. And then I decided I needed to eat before the stream, and then it took longer than I meant to get food together. Anyway, y'all don't need to hear the whole story. There we go. It's a little bit better.
Hopefully we won't need to pull.
Yeah, it's a bit overcast, so
I think it's actually
we'll
starting to rain just a little.
Is it? All right. Well, at any rate,
A tiny bit.
welcome everybody to the stream. I hope y'all are having a good day. I feel weirdly breathless. Just a little bit of running around beforehand and just somehow eating very quickly made me, oh my gosh. This is the most exercise I've had in days.
You know.
Anyway, so let's see where we were when we left off yesterday. Hi Michelle. Hi Tila. Important piece of information right up top before we start. This Thursday, in 2 days, the 13th, Thursday the 13th, I'm going to start the stream at 6. I'm going to do it early because a friend of mine is doing a live stream concert at 7. And I would like to watch it. My friend Dandelion. I'm very excited. They haven't done a live stream concert yet. I'm posting the link in the chat. There you go. Apologies if you do not have a Facebook account. It seems that they are doing it through Facebook Live. That was not my decision. So apologies for anyone who does not have Facebook. I think you can still watch a public live stream if you don't have an account, but
I think so.
Yeah, you should be able to. But I've heard other people, say people who didn't have Facebook accounts are like, meh, Facebook. Which, Facebook. But that's where the stream is happening. It's going to be great. So we'll start here at 6 and keep it tight, so that we're done by 7 for Dandelion stream. So I hope I will see some of you guys join me there. But yeah, I wanted to make sure people knew. I changed the time on the YouTube page, but I wanted to make sure people were aware. Plan accordingly. So let's see. Oh, yes. Anne has had further interactions with Captain Wentworth to distress her delicate constitution and guilt complex.
Yes.
Recently, he came within a foot of her, and she barely recovered.
Yes.
So he almost touched her, and she almost died. So that's where we left off yesterday. Which, I mean, I'm saying it sort of jokingly, but also like...
Haven't we all been there?
Yeah, legit. Okay. Let's start with chapter 10. Other opportunities of making her observations could not fail to occur. Anne had soon been in company with all the 4 together, often enough to have an opinion. Sorry. I forgot to, apparently, this is important to add. The 4 in question are the 2 Miss Musgroves, Louisa and Henrietta, and Captain Wentworth, and then a cousin of the Musgroves named Charles Hayter, right?
Such a great name.
It's like a people are. And Mary is a hater. And everyone has opinions about which of the sisters prefers which of the gentlemen or whatever it is. I think the argument is, do both sisters prefer Captain Wentworth, or does one of the sisters like Charles?
Yeah, I think it's just Henrietta's affections that are in question.
Yeah, it's spelled Hayter, but yes. Okay.
But it's awfully fun to play around with.
So, Anne had soon been in company with all the 4 together, often enough to have an opinion, though too wise to acknowledge as much at home, where she knew it would have satisfied neither husband nor wife. Remember, Mary and her Charles are arguing over who Louisa or Henrietta likes better. I can't even remember which of the Musgroves is supposed to had a previous attachment to Charles Hayter.
Henrietta.
Thank you, Henrietta.
That's why I was saying it's Henrietta's affections that are in. Louisa was never interested in
Right.
Charles Hayter.
Yes.
And she may or may not be smitten with Captain Wentworth.
Yeah.
Henrietta's the one who's in question.
Yes, okay. Henrietta is in question.
Because she and Charles were like lovey-dovey, and then he went away for like a couple of Sundays, and when he came back, he was astonished.
I know they say he was away, and then when he came back, and I was imagining it being like a matter of months because she's like totally forgotten of him.
Yeah.
And then there's like it was 3 Sundays he was gone. I'm like, excuse me.
And all of a sudden she's like, ooh, Captain Wentworth.
Yeah, like,
so he's like, excuse me, what?
2 to 3 weeks, and all of a sudden she forgets that she liked this other guy.
I mean, honestly, Henrietta, if I was Charles, I might be a little bit like, never mind.
Yeah. What the hell?
Yeah.
All right. For while she considered Louisa to be rather the favorite, she could not but think, as far as she might dare to judge from memory and experience, that Captain Wentworth was not in love with either. See, who Captain Wentworth likes is also in question.
Yes.
Whether Henrietta is totally over Charles Hayter or not is up for debate.
Yeah, and he seems completely oblivious of Charles.
Captain Wentworth.
As far as Charles's feelings.
Yeah, Captain Wentworth does not know about Henrietta and Charles, and who would tell him, right?
Yeah, no, he just tried to be friendly with Charles, and Charles was like,
how dare.
Yeah. And he's like,
step off, bro.
Okay, all right.
All right. They were more in love with him, yet there it was not love. It was a little fever of admiration. I'm sorry, I keep interrupting myself, but boy, that's a good line.
Yes.
It's not, I don't have a crush on him. It's just a little fever of admiration. It'll pass.
It's like Derbyshire Friends.
That's a really good one, you guys. It was a little fever of admiration, but it might, probably must, end in love with some. Charles Hayter seemed aware of being slighted, and yet Henrietta had sometimes the air of being divided between them. Anne longed for the power of representing to them all what they were about, and of pointing out some of the evils they were exposing themselves to. She did not attribute guile to any. It was the highest satisfaction to her to believe Captain Wentworth not in the least aware of the pain he was occasioning. There was no triumph, no pitiful triumph in his manner. He had probably never heard and never thought of any claims of Charles Hayter. He was only wrong in accepting the attentions, for accepting must be the word, of 2 young women at once. Well, after a short struggle, however, Charles Hayter seemed to quit the field. 3 days had passed without his coming once to Uppercross, a most decided change. He had even refused one regular invitation to dinner, and having been found on the occasion by Mr. Musgrove with some large books before him, Mr. and Mrs. Musgrove were sure all could not be right, and talked, with grave faces, of his studying himself to death. It was Mary's hope and belief that he had received a positive dismissal from Henrietta, and her husband lived under the constant dependence of seeing him tomorrow. And could only feel that Charles Hayter was wise.
Yes.
One morning, about this time, Charles Musgrove and Captain Wentworth being gone a-shooting together. Now remember, Charles Musgrove is Anne's brother-in-law, Mary's husband. Different from Charles Hayter.
Yes.
Different from little Charles, who is Charles Musgrove's son.
Who has repeatedly been referred to as the child ever since he hurt himself.
Yes, he's also referred to as the child.
Yes.
Gone a-shooting together. As the sisters in the cottage were sitting quietly at work, they were visited at the window by the sisters from the mansion house. It was a very fine November day, and the Miss Musgroves came through the little grounds, and stopped for no other purpose than to say that they were going to take a long walk, and therefore concluded Mary could not like to go with them. And when Mary immediately replied with some jealousy at not being supposed a good walker, "Oh, yes, I should like to join you very much. I am very fond of a long walk."
And like, oh, crap.
Anne felt persuaded by the looks of the 2 girls that it was precisely what they did not wish, and admired again the sort of necessity which the family habits seemed to produce, of everything being to be communicated, and everything being to be done together, however undesired and inconvenient. She tried to dissuade Mary from going, but in vain, and that being the case, thought it best to accept the Miss Musgrove's much more cordial invitation to herself to go likewise, as she might be useful in turning back with her sister, and lessening the interference in any plan of their own. "Oh, well, Mary, you're always talking about how sickly you are, and surely you won't want to go for a long walk." "Oh, yes, I do. I'm an excellent
walker. Why is everyone
walker."
always the person I'm not a good walker?
"Oh, Mary, Little Mrs. Bennet in training.
Yes.
I cannot imagine why they should suppose I should not like a long walk, said Mary as she went upstairs. Everybody is always supposing that I am not a good walker, and yet they would not have been pleased if we had refused to join them. When people come in this manner on purpose to ask us, how can one say no? She needs to convince herself, but they actually did want me to come along.
Yeah.
Dila says, Mary is an adventure.
That's one way to put it.
You never know what's going to happen next. Just as they were setting off, the gentlemen returned. They had taken out a young dog, which had spoilt their sport, and sent them back early. Their time and strength and spirits were therefore exactly ready for this walk, and they entered into it with pleasure. Could Anne have foreseen such a junction, she would have stayed at home. But from some feelings of interest and curiosity, she fancied now that it was too late to retract, and the whole six set forward together in the direction chosen by the Miss Musgroves, who evidently considered the walk as under their guidance. Anne's object was not to be in the way of anybody, and where the narrow paths across the field made many separations necessary to keep with her brother and sister. Her pleasure in the walk must arise from the exercise and the day, from the view of the last smiles of the year upon the tawny leaves and withered hedges, and from repeating to herself some few of the thousand poetical descriptions extant of autumn, that season of peculiar and inexhaustible influence on the mind of taste and tenderness, that season which has drawn from every poet worthy of being read some attempt at description or some lines of feeling. She occupied her mind as much as possible in such-like musings and quotations, but it was not possible that when within reach of Captain Wentworth's conversation with either of the Miss Musgroves, she should not try to hear it, yet she caught very little remarkable. It was mere lively chat, such as any young persons on an intimate footing might fall into. He was more engaged with Louisa than with Henrietta. Louisa certainly put more forward for his notice than her sister. This distinction appeared to increase, and there was one speech of Louisa's which struck her. After one of the many praises of the day, which were continually bursting forth, Captain Wentworth added, "What glorious weather for the Admiral and my sister! They meant to take a long drive this morning. Perhaps we may hail them from some of these hills. They talked of coming into this side of the country. I wonder whereabouts they will upset today. Oh, it does happen very often, I assure you. But my sister makes nothing of it. She would..." What? She would as leave be tossed out as not? Lieve? She would as live?
Oh. That sounds like a variation on leaf. Which means what you... she would as leave be tossed out as not. She would as soon be tossed out as not.
I've never heard that phrase.
I haven't seen it spelled that way, but I've seen lief.
Really?
Yeah.
I've never seen that before. I was like,
I feel like it's a little bit older.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's being elegant and poetical or what.
Yeah. Anyway, it might have been one of those sort of antiquated figures of speech that kind of sticks around, like that you only use that word in that context. Like today, you might still say, oh God, I couldn't think of any actual examples. But there's lots of words that you only use in a certain figure of speech. And maybe at that time this was one that was antiquated, but you'd still use it in that context. I don't know. You don't have to Google it if you want to know. I've never seen it before. Anyway, apparently they have problems with their carriage.
Frequently.
"Ah, you make the most of it, I know," cried Louisa. "But if it were really so, I should do just the same in her place. If I loved a man as she loves the Admiral, I would be always with him. Nothing should ever separate us, and I would rather be overturned by him than driven safely by anybody else."
I mean,
it was spoken with enthusiasm.
Sure.
"Had you?" cried he, catching the same tone. "I honor you." There was silence between them for a little while. Anne could not immediately fall into a quotation again. The sweet scenes of autumn were for a while put by, unless some tender sonnet, fraught with the apt analogy of the declining year, with declining happiness, and the images of youth and hope and spring all gone together blessed her memory. She roused herself to say, as they struck by order into another path, "Is this not one of the ways to Winthrop?" But nobody heard, or at least nobody answered her.
Only Anne.
I know that seems like her perception of the situation.
No.
Oh, I guess nobody heard me. Or if they did hear me, they just decided not to answer because I'm only Anne.
Yeah.
I was just thinking this is a slightly more poetical description of like the situation and the weather than we often get from Austen, or at least in the ones that I've read. I feel like she doesn't talk a lot about the weather or the scenery or anything. It's mostly focusing on people. But this bit about the last smiles of the year upon the tawny leaves and withered hedges, like I was like, oh, that's just don't expect that.
Perhaps she was feeling.
She was just in a mood.
Yeah, hard mood.
Winthrop, however, and or its environs, for young men are sometimes to be met with, strolling about near home, was their destination. And after another half-mile of gradual ascent through large enclosures where the plows at work and the fresh-made path spoke the farmer counteracting the sweets of poetical despondence, and meaning to have spring again, they gained the summit of the most considerable hill which parted Uppercross and Winthrop, and soon commanded a full view of the latter, at the foot of the hill on the other side. Winthrop, without beauty and without dignity, was stretched before them, an indifferent house, standing low, and hemmed in by the barns and buildings of a farmyard. Mary exclaimed, "Bless me, here is Winthrop. I declare I had no idea." Listen to Anne. "Well, now I think we had better turn back. I am excessively tired." Henrietta, conscious and ashamed, and seeing no cousin Charles walking along any path or leaning against any gate, was ready to do as Mary wished, but "No," said Charles Musgrove, and "No, no," cried Louisa more eagerly, and taking her sister aside, seemed to be arguing the matter warmly. Charles, in the meanwhile, was very decidedly declaring his resolution of calling on his aunt, now that he was so near, and very evidently, though more fearfully, trying to induce his wife to go too. But this was one of the points on which the lady showed her strength, and when he recommended the advantage of resting herself a quarter of an hour at Winthrop, as she felt so tired, she resolutely answered, "Oh, no, indeed. Walking up that hill again would do her more harm than any sitting down could do her good." And in short, her look and manner declared that she would not go. That go she would not. "I'm super tired." "Oh, then why don't we go rest somewhere so you can rest for the walk back?" "Oh, no, I just need to go back right now."
Why is everyone always assuming I'm not a good walker?
Well, I think she doesn't want them to go visit Charles Hayter.
Yeah, no, I'm just throwing her words back in her face. Like, because of this, Mary.
Yeah. After a little succession of these sort of debates and consultations, it was settled between Charles and his two sisters that he and Henrietta should just run down for a few minutes to see their aunt and cousins, while the rest of the party waited for them at the top of the hill. Louisa seemed the principal arranger of the plan, and as she went a little way with them down the hill, still talking to Henrietta, Mary took the opportunity of looking scornfully around her and saying to Captain Wentworth, "It is very unpleasant having such connections, but I assure you I've never been in the house above twice in my life."
Wow.
Wow, Mary.
First of all, that makes you seem rude.
Yeah, no, absolutely rude. Like,
yeah. Like, why did you brag about that?
She's so, I don't know. It's like, she seems so certain that apparently Captain Wentworth is also looking down on their acquaintance or on their relations.
Yeah.
But like having those relations, bragging about snubbing them does not actually seem like a good move.
Yeah.
She received no other answer than an artificial assenting smile, followed by a contemptuous glance as he turned away, which Anne perfectly knew the meaning of. The brow of the hill where they remained was a cheerful spot. Louisa returned, and Mary, finding a comfortable seat for herself on the step of a stile, was very well satisfied so long as the others all stood about her. But when Louisa drew Captain Wentworth away to try for a gleaning of nuts in an adjoining hedgerow, and they were gone by degrees, quite out of sight and sound, Mary was happy no longer. She quarreled with her own seat, was sure Louisa had got a much better somewhere, and nothing could prevent her from going to look for a better also. She turned through the same gate, but could not see them. Anne found a nice seat for her on a dry, sunny bank under the hedgerow, in which she had no doubt of their still being in some spot, or in which she had no doubt of their still being in some spot or other. What? Mary sat down for a moment, but it would not do. She was sure Louisa had found a better seat somewhere else, and she would go on till she overtook her. At this point, is she I guess it must be that she so strongly wants Henrietta to end up with Captain Wentworth, not instead of Charles Hayter, that she wants to thwart any attempts Louisa has at getting Captain Wentworth's attention.
I mean, it could also just be her petty nature wanting what she doesn't have, or wanting something better.
Yeah, like it could be both. I wonder if it's not like
that is possible,
because otherwise you would think she would
really
be like,
want Henrietta to marry Captain Wentworth.
Yeah,
but I don't know if she's that calculating.
Yeah, that's honestly a good point. That is a good point.
I don't know if she thinks that far ahead.
Anne, really tired herself, was glad to sit down, and she very soon heard Captain Wentworth and Louisa in the hedgerow behind her, as if making their way back along the rough, wild sort of channel down the centre. They were speaking as they drew near. Louisa's voice was the first distinguished. She seemed to be in the middle of some eager speech. What Anne first heard was, "And so I made her go. I could not bear that she should be frightened from the visit by such nonsense. What? Would I be turned back from doing a thing that I had determined to do, and that I knew to be right, by the airs and interference of such a person, or of any person, I may say? No, I have no idea of being so easily persuaded. When I have made up my mind, I have made it. And Henrietta seemed entirely to have made up hers to call at Winthrop today, and yet she was as near giving it up out of nonsensical complaisance. She would have turned back then, but for you. She would have indeed. I am almost ashamed to say it. Happy for her to have such a mind as yours at hand. After the hints you gave just now, which did but confirm my own observations, the last time I was in company with him, I need not affect to have no comprehension of what is going on. I see that more than a mere dutiful morning visit to your aunt was in question, and woe betide him, and her too, when it comes to things of consequence, when they are placed in circumstances requiring fortitude and strength of mind, if she have not resolution enough to resist idle interference in such a trifle as this. Your sister is an amiable creature, but yours is the character of decision and firmness, I see. If you value her conduct or happiness, infuse as much of your own spirit into her as you can. But this, no doubt, you have always been doing. It is the worst evil of too yielding and too indecisive a character, that no influence over it can be depended on. You are never sure of a good impression being durable. Everybody may sway it. Let those who would be happy be firm. There is a nut, said he. Oh, there is a nut, said he, catching one down from an upper bough, to exemplify, a beautiful glossy nut, which, blessed with original strength, has outlived all the storms of autumn. Not a puncture, not a weak spot anywhere. This nut, he continued, with playful solemnity, while so many of its brethren have fallen and been trodden underfoot, is still in possession of all the happiness that a hazelnut can be supposed capable of. I'm glad that he referred to it as him being playful, because I was wondering, like, wow, you're being very serious about a nut.
Yeah.
Then, returning to his former earnest tone, my first wish for all whom I am interested in is that they should be firm. If Louisa Musgrove would be beautiful and happy in her November of life, she will cherish all her present power of mind. He had done and was unanswered. It would have surprised Anne if Louisa would have readily answered such a speech. Words of such interest, spoken with such serious warmth. She could imagine what Louisa was feeling. For herself, she feared to move, lest she should be seen. While she remained, a bush of low, rambling holly protected her, and they were moving on. Before they were beyond her hearing, however, Louisa spoke again. Mary is good-natured enough in many respects, said she, but she does sometimes provoke me excessively by her nonsense and her pride. The Elliott pride. She has a great deal too much of the Elliott pride. We do so wish that Charles had married Anne instead. I suppose you know he wanted to marry Anne?" After a moment's pause, Captain Wentworth said, "Do you mean that she refused him?" "Oh, yes, certainly." "When did that happen?" "I do not exactly know, for Henrietta and I were at school at the time, but I believe about a year before he married Mary. I wish she had accepted him. We should all have liked her a great deal better, and Papa and Mamma always thought it was her great friend, Lady Russell's doing that she did not.
Dun, dun, dun.
They think Charles might not be learned and bookish enough to please Lady Russell, and that therefore she persuaded Anne to refuse him." Oh, so close.
Yeah.
So close.
Yeah.
But yes, please do put these ideas into Captain Wentworth's mind.
Yes. Yes. Since he has already come down strongly on people who are easily persuaded.
Oh, well, that's true. I was thinking more that this might persuade him to think that possibly Lady Russell convinced Anne not to marry him, rather than her choosing not to marry him of her own accord. But you're right.
I thought he was already aware of that.
Oh, I don't know.
I guess they haven't really said.
I don't know why he would know. Like, would she tell him?
Possibly. I don't know. I mean,
I don't think she would.
He might be aware of the effects of.
He might have suspected that Lady Russell was involved if he knew what her personality was like.
Right.
But I can't imagine that at the time period when she broke off their engagement, she would have said, "I don't really want to, but Lady Russell made me do it." You know, she would just say, "I believe it best that we not see each other again," or whatever, and then walk away decisively or something like that. You know.
Yeah. That's a good question. I've always assumed that he knew.
Esty says she thought that up until this point, Wentworth thought her father was the one who convinced her to break off the engagement.
Really? Why?
I don't know. Look at me. She just said it in the chat.
I guess I'm questioning everything.
I don't know.
I'm questioning why I thought that, because I had assumed.
I have gotten just reading the book.
Yeah.
This time, for the second time, but it's been so many years that this almost might as well.
Yeah. You're the best person to.
Yeah. I had no impression that Wentworth knew why she gave him up.
You're probably right.
And my assumption,
so maybe this is the first time that he's
been getting the idea that maybe
that
she
Lady
didn't
Russell might have been the one who convinced Anne.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like,
you are probably right. I never thought of it before, but your perspective is probably the least biased. So
yeah,
that
is at least my impression thus far. That it was at least never mentioned that he was given a reason, and so
we don't know what Anne told him.
Yeah. I guess my impression is that she wouldn't tell him. She wouldn't give him a reason, or she would come up with some reason that she might think would make it easy on him, like let him down easy or something like that.
Or she might have told him Lady Russell's reasons without saying where they came from.
Yeah. I can't imagine that
Lady
she would
Russell
say,
persuaded her.
"Sorry, I can't marry you." Lady Russell says I mustn't. That doesn't seem.
I mean, Lady Russell persuaded her, and she's not stupid, so probably those arguments had some weight, and she might have presented.
That's the thing, is I think that it's not that she is so easily controlled that she would go, "I'm sorry, I really want to marry you, but I can't upset Lady Russell because she's basically my mom." She would have said, she would have been convinced by Lady Russell's arguments that Lady Russell was correct, and she might have repeated those, but she wouldn't have mentioned that someone else had persuaded her. She would have believed that those reasons were sound.
Yeah.
At least on one level. And
now he's thinking that maybe that's what happened.
That was kind of how I was reading the scene.
That makes sense.
Because it's he clearly didn't know that Charles proposed. And why would he? And there's a pause. After a moment's pause, "Do you mean that she refused him?" It's kind of like, wait, she turned down somebody else?
Right.
Why did she turn down this other person?
Yeah.
So it wasn't just that I wasn't good enough. She also turned down. Why did she turn down Charles then?
Yeah.
It's just, it might be awakening his mind ideas that maybe it's not as cut and dry as she turned me down because I wasn't good enough. Or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think you're right.
The sounds were retreating, and Anne distinguished no more. Her own emotions still kept her fixed. She had much to recover from before she could move. the listener's proverbial fate was not absolutely hers. She had heard no evil of herself, but she had heard a great deal of very painful import. She saw how her own character was considered by Captain Wentworth, and there had been just that degree of feeling and curiosity about her in his manner, which must give her extreme agitation. As soon as she could, she went after Mary, and having found and walked back with her to their former station by the stile, felt some comfort in their whole party being immediately afterwards collected, and once more in motion together. Her spirits wanted the solitude and silence which only numbers could give. Especially when Mary's around.
Yeah, yeah.
Charles and Henrietta returned, bringing, as may be conjectured, Charles Hayter with them. The minutiae of the business Anne could not attempt to understand. Even Captain Wentworth did not seem admitted to perfect confidence here, but that there had been a withdrawing on the gentleman's side and a relenting on the ladies', and that they were now very glad to be together again, did not admit a doubt. Yay! Woo-hoo! Henrietta looked a little ashamed, but very well pleased. Charles Hayter exceedingly happy, and they were devoted to each other almost from the first instant of their all setting forward for Uppercross. Good.
Finally,
I couldn't totally remember if that's how it if that's how it had worked out. So that's good.
Yes.
Obviously, as soon as Louisa you hear what she says to Captain Wentworth, it's like, okay, that's why the two of them were trying to convince Mary to not go with them. It was just, It wasn't just from a general dislike of Mary.
Although that would be enough.
Yes. But yeah, it was because they had this specific plan.
Yeah.
Was that this? I thought I heard the screen door.
I think, is it a little bit ajar?
No, I meant the front door.
Oh.
I thought maybe someone had come up to the porch, but anyway. All right. Yes, right. Everything now marked out Louisa for Captain Wentworth. Nothing could be plainer. And there were many divisions, and where many divisions were necessary, and even where they were not, they walked side by side, nearly as much as the other two. In a long strip of meadowland, where there was ample space for all, they were thus divided, forming three distinct parties, and to that party of the three which boasted least animation and least complaisance, Anne necessarily belonged. She joined Charles and Mary, and was tired enough to be very glad of Charles' other arm. But Charles, though in very good humor with her, was out of temper with his wife. Mary had shown herself disobliging to him, and was now to reap the consequence, which consequence was his dropping her arm almost every moment, to cut off the heads of some nettles in the hedge with his switch. And when Mary began to complain of it and lament her being ill-used, according to custom, in being on the hedge side, while Anne was never incommoded on the other, he dropped the arms of both to hunt after a weasel which he had a momentary glance of, and they could hardly get him along at all.
So awkward.
Hey, buddy, here's my little weasel.
Yeah.
All right, we'll have a brief cat break.
Yeah.
Hi, Pepper. Say hello to your adoring public. Yeah.
He hasn't thrown up in a whole 2 hours.
Yeah, good job. He goes through these phases of like wanting to eat dirt and bits of plants and then throw them up immediately. And it's one of those days, isn't it, Pepper? Mm-hmm. He's so cute, but he's such a scamp. Mm. All right. That's enough of that. This long meadow bordered a lane, which their footpath at the end of it was to cross, and when the party had all reached the gate of exit, the carriage advancing in the same direction, which had been some time heard, was just coming up and proved to be Admiral Croft's gig. He and his wife had taken their intended drive and were returning home. Upon hearing how long a walk the young people had engaged in, they kindly offered a seat to any lady who might be particularly tired. It would save her full a mile, and they were going through Uppercross. The invitation was general and generally declined. The Miss Musgroves were not at all tired, and Mary was either offended, not being asked before any of the others, or what Louisa called the Elliott pride, could not endure to make a third in a one-horse chaise.
It's hardly a barouche landau.
Right. Am I right? Oh, Tila, if you have an old kitty man, then you know just what it's like.
Yeah.
All right. The walking party had crossed the lane and were surmounting an opposite stile, and the Admiral was putting his horse into motion again, when Captain Wentworth cleared the hedge in a moment to say something to his sister. The something might be guessed by its effects. "Miss Elliott, I am sure you are tired," cried Mrs. Croft. "Do let us have the pleasure of taking you home. Here is excellent room for 3, I assure you. If we were all like you, I believe we might sit 4. Oh, I think she's just saying that Anne is very small.
I think so, yeah.
"You must indeed, you must." Oh, that doesn't look good. Captain Wentworth's like, "Please take Anne."
Yeah.
Anne was still in the lane, and though instinctively beginning to decline, she was not allowed to proceed. The Admiral's kind urgency came in support of his wife's. They would not be refused. They compressed themselves into the smallest possible space to leave her a corner, and Captain Wentworth, without saying a word, turned to her and quietly obliged her to be assisted into the carriage. Yes, he had done it. She was in the carriage and felt that he had placed her there, that his will and his hands had done it, that she owed it to his perception of her fatigue and his resolution to give her rest. She was very much affected by the view of his disposition towards her, which all these things made apparent. This little circumstance seemed the completion of all that had gone before. Oh, that's interesting. I read it as I thought she would be like, "Oh, yes, of course he wants to get rid of me. He hates being around me."
I assumed that she would interpret it that way as well, even though it's clearer to the readers that is that is a logical interpretation as well.
Yeah, I'm just amazed that she took
I know.
She didn't take the self-deprecating approach.
Yeah, that's so unlike Anne.
Yeah. She understood him. He could not forgive her, but he could not be unfeeling. Though condemning her for the past and considering it with high and unjust resentment, though perfectly careless of her, and though becoming attached to another, still he could not see her suffer without the desire of giving her relief. It was a remainder of former sentiment. It was an impulse of pure though unacknowledged friendship. It was a proof of his own warm and amiable heart, which she could not contemplate without emotions so compounded of pleasure and pain that she knew not which prevailed. Her answers to the kindness and the remarks of her companions were at first unconsciously given. They had travelled half their way along the rough lane before she was quite awake to what they said. She then found them talking of Frederick. "He certainly means to have one or other of the 2 girls, Sophie," said the Admiral, "but there is no saying which. He has been running after them too long enough, one would think, to make up his mind. Aye, this comes of the peace. If it were war now, he would have settled it long ago. We sailors, Miss Elliott, cannot afford to make long courtships in time of war. How many days was it, my dear, between the first time of my seeing you and our sitting down together in our lodgings at North Yarmouth? Yarmouth?
I don't know.
We had better not talk about it, my dear," replied Mrs. Croft pleasantly. "For if Miss Elliott were to hear how soon we came to an understanding, she would never be persuaded that we could be happy together. I had known you by character, however, long before." "Well, and I had heard of you as a very pretty girl, and what were we to wait for besides? I do not like having such things so long in hand." God, by today's standards, it's like, oh boy.
Yeah.
Then again, I mean, how quickly does Mr. Collins ask?
That is true.
Lucas, for example.
That is true.
Not as fast as in the book. I mean, in the movie, but still pretty fast.
Well, yeah. There's.
It's even faster in the miniseries because
it is faster, although
they just have to tighten up the.
It is faster, but it's particularly fast on the DVD where the episodes are strung together.
Oh yeah.
When it originally aired, it was Lizzie's refusal of Mr. Collins was the end of that episode, and so it would have been
like a whole week.
A week before we got
seeing the next scene. Yeah. As opposed to it happening immediately.
Yeah. So it's
but even in the timeline, it feels like it's the next day.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not.
It certainly feels very soon.
Anywho, it suddenly got rather dark in here.
Yes.
I guess it probably is raining.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, everything okay? All right.
Yes.
Everything's fine.
Nothing is broken.
You guys, we've broken so many things in this house.
Oh my god.
In the last few months. It's ridiculous. Okay.
Even the
I wish
dishes.
Frederick. What?
I said even the plastic dishes are not safe.
Even broke a plastic dish recently. It's like, what is wrong with us?
Yeah.
It's almost like we're in the middle of a global pandemic and we're stressed. I wish Frederick would spread a little more canvas and bring us home one of these young ladies to Kellynch. Then there would always be company for them. And very nice young ladies they both are. I hardly know one from the other. What a compliment. Very good-humoured, unaffected girls indeed, said Mrs. Croft, in a tone of calmer praise, such as made Anne suspect that her keener powers might not consider either of them as quite worthy of her brother. And a very respectable family. One could not be connected with better people. My dear Admiral, that post. We shall certainly take that post. But by coolly giving the reins a better direction herself, they happily passed the danger, and by once afterwards judiciously putting out her hand, they neither fell into a rut nor ran afoul of a dung cart. Oh, and Anne, with some amusement at their style of driving, which she imagined no bad representation of the general guidance of their affairs, found herself safely deposited by them at the cottage. It's that whole time we were having that amusing little interlude, I was thinking, I guess Anne's attitude towards Captain Wentworth had to be affected, her idea of his feelings towards her, by him helping her with the little boy the day before.
That's true. That is true.
That seems to have kind of changed. She wouldn't have thought he would do that. He would just, Charles Hayter was in the same room. He's related to the little boy. Yeah. And he just sat there going, say, leave her alone. Yeah. Leave her alone.
Yeah.
I say, young boy.
Also, old married couples. Am I right?
But also that.
It reminds me so much of the way my parents drive, except my mom just stays in the side seat and tries to give my dad instruction that he doesn't actually need.
Classic. All right. Chapter 11. The time now approached for Lady Russell's return. The day wasn't even fixed, and Anne, being engaged to join her as soon as she was resettled, was looking forward to an early removal to Kellynch, and beginning to think how her own comfort was likely to be affected by it. It would place her in the same village with Captain Wentworth, within half a mile of him. They would have to frequent the same church, and there must be intercourse between the two families. I thought she was going to Bath from...
Yeah, I thought so too.
She's going back to Kellynch to stay with Lady Russell now? All right, apparently.
Yeah, I thought she was going to leave as soon as Lady Russell was ready to leave, and they would go to Bath together.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Well, maybe they're going. Maybe they're going to Kellynch. Because where did Lady Russell go? Now I've forgotten. She had to go somewhere, and that's why Anne went to stay with Mary, right?
Oh, did she?
Lady Russell had to do something.
Oh, I don't remember that.
I've already forgotten. Anyway, apparently they're going back to Kellynch for a little while. Well,
whatever.
Yeah.
Plot reasons.
They would have to frequent the same church, and there must be intercourse between the two families. This was against her. But, on the other hand, he spent so much of his time at Uppercross that in removing thence, she might be considered rather as leaving him behind than as going towards him. And upon the whole, she believed she must, on this interesting question, be the gainer, almost as certainly as in her change of domestic society, in leaving poor Mary for Lady Russell. I don't know, it's a toss-up between those two.
Kind of.
Mary is more annoying, but Lady Russell's more controlling. No. She wished it might be possible for her to avoid ever seeing Captain Wentworth at the Hall. Those rooms had witnessed former meetings, which would be brought too painfully before her. But she was yet more anxious for the possibility of Lady Russell and Captain Wentworth never meeting anywhere.
Yes.
They did not like each other, and no renewal of acquaintance now could do any good. And were Lady Russell to see them together, she might think that he had too much self-possession and she too little. These points formed her chief solicitude in anticipating her removal from Uppercross, where she felt she had been stationed quite long enough. Her usefulness to little Charles would always give some sweetness to the memory of her 2 months' visit there, but he was gaining strength apace, and she had nothing else to stay for. The conclusion of her visit, however, was diversified in a way which she had not at all imagined. Captain Wentworth, after being unseen and unheard of at Upcross for 2 whole days, appeared again among them to justify himself by a relation of what had kept him away. A letter from his friend, Captain Harville, having found him out at last, had brought intelligence of Captain Harville's being settled with his family at Lyme for the winter, of their being, therefore, quite unknowingly, within 20 miles of each other. Captain Harville had never been in good health since a severe wound which he received 2 years before, and Captain Wentworth's anxiety to see him had determined him to go immediately to Lyme. He had been there for 24 hours. His acquittal was complete, his friendship warmly honored, a lively interest excited for his friend, and his description of the fine country about Lyme so feelingly attended to by the party that an earnest desire to see Lyme themselves and a project for going thither was the consequence. The young people were all wild to see Lyme.
They're always wild about something.
Oh, I'm absolutely wild to see Lyme.
Wild for dancing, wild to see Lyme.
Captain Wentworth talked of going there again himself. It was only 17 miles from Uppercross, though November, the weather was by no means bad, and in short, Louisa, who was the most eager of the eager, having formed the resolution to go, and besides the pleasure of doing as she liked, being now armed with the idea of merit in maintaining her own way, bore down all the wishes of her father and mother for putting it off till summer, and to Lyme they were to go. Charles, Mary, Anne, Henrietta, Louisa, and Captain Wentworth. It's like, she's like, nope. The guy I like was just telling me how important it is to be firm and know your own mind. So to Lyme we go.
Yes. Nothing shall dissuade me, even though it is November.
Lyme party. The first heedless scheme had been to go in the morning and return at night. But to this Mr. Musgrove, for the sake of his horses, would not consent. And when it came to be rationally considered, a day in the middle of November would not leave much time for seeing a new place, after deducting 7 hours, as the nature of the country required, for going and returning. Yeah.
I'm surprised you would think
Why would you even consider that? Like 3.5 hours each way?
If you're going to do a road trip, you might as well just, like, stay.
Yeah, I feel like
Stay the night.
I feel like 3.5 hours is too long for a day trip.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Especially when the strength of horses is in question.
Thank goodness someone was thinking of the horses.
Yes, won't someone think of the horses? They were consequently to stay the night there and not be expected back till the next day's dinner. This was felt to be a considerable amendment, and though they all met at the great house at rather an early breakfast hour and set off very punctually, it was so much past noon before the 2 carriages, Mr. Musgrove's coach containing the 4 ladies, and Charles' curricle, in which he drove Captain Wentworth, were descending the long hill into Lyme, and entering upon the still steeper street of the town itself, that it was very evident they would not have more than time for looking about them before the light and warmth of the day were gone. Yeah, that's a good point, especially in November, where the daylight to do anything out of doors.
Yeah, I mean, think about it's dark at 4 o'clock.
Yeah, like what do you? I guess they arrived. They managed to arrive by noon, but still.
Oh well, still, yeah.
That's
not that much time, and if they had been intending to go back, it's 3.5 hours to go back.
Yeah,
so they would have had like a half an hour and then turn.
Oh, there we go. After securing accommodations and ordering a dinner at one of the inns, the next thing to be done was unquestionably to walk directly down to the sea. They were come too late in the year for any amusement or variety which Lyme, as a public place, might offer. The rooms were shut up, the lodges almost all gone, scarcely any family but of the residents left, and as there is nothing to admire in the buildings themselves, the remarkable situation of the town, the principal street almost hurrying into the water, the walk to the Cobb skirting round the pleasant little bay, which, in the season, is animated with bathing machines and company. Bathing machines?
Wow. Okay.
I do not know. Somebody please look up what a Regency-era bathing machine is.
Oh, I think I might. I was just looking up curricle.
Oh. bathing machines. There we go. The Cobb itself, its old wonders and new improvements, with the very beautiful line of cliffs stretched out to the east of the town, are what the stranger's eye will seek. And a very strange stranger it must be who does not see charms in the immediate environs of Lyme to make him wish to know it better. The scenes of its neighborhood, Charmouth, I bet that's one that's pronounced differently than you'd guess, with its high grounds and extensive sweeps of country, and still more its sweet retired bay, backed by dark cliffs, where fragments of low rock among the sands make it the happiest spot for watching the flow of the tide, for sitting in unwearied contemplation, the woody varieties of the cheerful village of Uplime, and above all, Pinny, with its green chasms between romantic rocks, where the scattered forest trees and orchards of luxuriant growth declare that many a generation must have passed away since the first partial falling of the cliff prepared the ground for such a state, where a scene so wonderful and so lovely is exhibited as may more than equal any of the resembling scenes of the far-famed Isle of Wight. These places must be visited, and visited again, to make the worth of Lyme understood. Oh, all right, Jane, tell us how you really feel. I realize you really like Lyme.
I mean...
Again, this seems like a lot more description of place than we usually get from her. The party from Uppercross, passing down by the now deserted and melancholy-looking rooms, and still descending, soon found themselves on the seashore, and, lingering only as all must linger and gaze on a first return to the sea, whoever deserved to look on it at all, proceeded towards the Cobb, equally their object itself, and on Captain Wentworth's account, for in a small house near the foot of an old pier of unknown date were the Harvilles settled. Captain Wentworth turned in to call on his friend. The others walked on, and he was to join them on the Cobb. I do not know what the Cobb is. It's a capital C and two B's.
Oh,
so.
I think it's like a jetty.
But it's a proper name, so it's not just the the C is capitalized.
Right.
They were by no means tired of wondering and admiring, and not even Louisa seemed to feel that they had parted with Captain Wentworth long, when they saw him coming after them with 3 companions, all well known already by description to be Captain and Mrs. Harville, and a Captain Benwick who was staying with them. Captain Benwick had some time ago been first lieutenant of the Laconia, and the account which Captain Wentworth had given of him on his return from Lyme before, his warm praise of him as an excellent young man and an officer, whom he had always valued highly, which must have stamped him well in the esteem of every listener, which had been followed by a little history of his private life, which rendered him perfectly interesting in the eyes of all the ladies.
Okay, do you want to know what a Cobb is?
Oh, yes.
Or the Cobb. I'm not sure if it's the only one, but it's the harbor wall, and this is a picture of.
Oh. Okay. Yes.
So
maybe that's just the name. It is a harbor wall, but it is called the Cobb in that place specifically.
Under Visit Lyme Regis, it says the world famous Cobb. So
apparently, Jane just assumed we would know about the Cobb.
It's a world famous.
It's
no satisfactory explanation of the name exists.
Oh, that makes sense. It's the kind of thing people just talk about, like, oh yeah, go over to the Cobb. Yeah. Like it could have been a whimsical name or like something sort of unofficial that residents used to, and it was used so long that nobody ever kept track of why.
Yeah.
All right. We're talking about Captain Benwick. All right. He had been engaged to Captain Harville's sister and was now mourning her loss. They had been a year or 2 waiting for fortune and promotion. Fortune came, his prize money as lieutenant being great. Promotion, too, came at last, but Fanny Harville did not live to know it. She had died the preceding summer while he was at sea. Captain Wentworth believed it impossible for a man to be more attached to woman than poor Benwick had been to Fanny Harville, or be more deeply afflicted under the dreadful change. He considered his disposition as of the sort which must suffer heavily, uniting very strong feelings with quiet, serious, and retiring manners, and a decided taste for reading and sedentary pursuits. To finish the interest of the story, the friendship between him and the Harvilles seemed, if possible, augmented by the event which closed all their views of alliance, and Captain Benwick was now living with them entirely. Captain Harville had taken his present house for half a year, his taste and his health and his fortune all directing him to a residence unexpensive and by the sea, and the grandeur of the country and the retirement of Lyme in the winter appeared exactly adapted to Captain Benwick's state of mind. The sympathy and goodwill excited towards Captain Benwick was very great. And yet, said Anne to herself, as they now moved forward to meet the party, he has not, perhaps, a more sorrowing heart than I have. I cannot believe his prospects so blighted forever. He is younger than I am, younger in feeling, if not in fact, younger as a man. He will rally again and be happy with another. Boy, Anne, that's, I don't know.
That's pretty.
Like, wow, he was in love with this woman, and then she died while he was at sea, right when he finally was getting the things he was waiting for, so that they could get married.
Yeah.
But he's not as bad off as me.
Yeah.
Like, that actually seems... I can't decide if that's her being self-pitying or just really believing so strongly in her own, like, uselessness, you know?
Yeah.
Like, well, he's still relatively
I mean, it
young.
is true that he's more likely to marry again, or
Yes.
to marry than she is at
Yes.
this point. But I'm not sure if that's.
But still, saying, and yet he is not more sorrowing than I am. Like,
yeah, that seems a little.
Yeah, it seems like a lot.
Yeah.
Anne.
That's yeah.
All right. They all met and were introduced. Captain Harville was a tall, dark man with a sensible, benevolent countenance, a little lame, and from strong features and want of health, looking much older than Captain Wentworth. Captain Benwick looked and was the youngest of the three, and compared with either of them, a little man. He had a pleasing face and a melancholy air, just as he ought to have, and drew back from conversation. Captain Harville, though not equaling Captain Wentworth in manners, was a perfect gentleman, unaffected, warm, and obliging. Mrs. Harville, a degree less polished than her husband, seemed, however, to have the same good feelings, and nothing could be more pleasant than their desire of considering the whole party as friends of their own, because the friends of Captain Wentworth, or more kindly hospitable than their entreaties for their all promising to dine with them.
It sounds like
one of those weird
two
sentences
that got spliced together.
Yeah. The dinner, already ordered at the inn, was at last, though unwillingly, accepted as an excuse. But they seemed almost hurt that Captain Wentworth should have brought any such party to Lyme without considering it as a thing of course that they should dine with them. There was so much attachment to Captain Wentworth in all this, and such a bewitching charm, and a degree of hospitality so uncommon, so unlike the usual style of give-and-take invitations and dinners of formality and display, that Anne felt her spirits not likely to be benefited by an increasing acquaintance among his brother officers. These would have been all my friends, was her thought, and she had to struggle against a great tendency to lowness. I think I'm actually going to call it there. We're just creeping up on an hour. We finished the last chapter at only 40 minutes, and I was like, well, that's a little soon to stop.
Yeah.
But I guess I could have stopped right before they met Captain Benwick. But again, it's always hard to find.
Yeah.
To find that good stopping point, because you think you're still waiting for a good stopping point, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh no, now I'm in a new topic. All of a sudden.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to stop on Anne struggling against a great tendency to lowness, and we will pick back up tomorrow with the rest of chapter 11. Tila, I hope it's not too confusing. I've been getting notifications of your comments on the Emma videos. That was not too confusing of you to be following two Austen novels read by me at the same time. It's very gratifying. As someone who has been frequently throughout my life told I am the sort of person who people can only handle in small doses. It's very gratifying for basically a total stranger to be listening to me read two books at the same time. So thank you. Nice to know that somebody can tolerate listening to my voice all day. Poor Carolyn doesn't have a choice these days.
Mm.
Stuck here with me. And yet she still chooses to sit and listen to me read Persuasion.
I
So
do.
nice.
I do.
It's nice to be appreciated. Anyway, oh, thank you. I'm glad that you're enjoying it, Tila. Anyway, so we will wrap up. We'll be back tomorrow at 6:30 to read more. And then remember, Thursday, we will start at 6 Pacific. Sorry if that's a tight squeeze for anyone getting off work, but I would very much like to watch my friends stream. So I think hopefully it will work out for everyone. So on that note, I think I have nothing else to say other than the usual links down below if you want to check out my music or the audiobook I released of my 3 short stories, which is also on Bandcamp. Also links for tips if you're into that sort of thing and you're enjoying me reading the book. On that note, I shall see you tomorrow. Bye. Bye. Bye.